So I wanted to talk today about the Eightfold Path and where we are in this moment. Uh, and I'll tell you a little story to start. I grew up in a town named Lowell, Massachusetts. Fairly violent place when I was a kid. And in order to graduate from public high school, you had to have a minimum of 2 years of military science. Each intersection in Lowell has a plaque on it with the name of someone who's been killed in a war, who was a resident of Lowell. It's sort of expected that you're going to be in the military for some time. I graduated from high school and was just starting in college when Kennedy made his speech asking that we ask not what our country would do for us, but what we could do for our country. The Vietnam War was winding up, and the country had started drafting people. I really felt that I needed to see for myself what this was, and I dropped out of school and volunteered for the Army. I joined the Army. And wound up in Vietnam. I wanted to do what my country said needed to be done. And that was my mindset there. I slowly became politicized. I got to see firsthand that we had really no business being there. Part of what I did was I read a lot of documents in Vietnamese and translated into English. I also spent a number of months in the field. And the day came when I was experiencing firsthand the incredible violence that is war. I won't describe exactly what happened, but at the end of it, a beautiful day, exactly like today, only a lot warmer. I got up from where I was and moved to across this little gravel patch, sunny, and I could, like I can still hear each footstep on the gravel. And the sensation I had was that I was freezing to death. That heat just didn't make it through at all for me. I got into this Jeep that I was using, and that's the last I remember of that day. I realized that I just could not be part of that any longer. And here I was in the middle of war. No idea what to do, how to be with what was there, what I realized, and what my experience was. I stumbled through the rest of my time there and was discharged at the same time that I returned from Vietnam. It's called the gangplank discharge, and wound up back in Lowell again about a week after that. Having found that what I'd been told about why we were there, what I'd seen in the news, what I'd heard was not the reality. I had to experience the reality in order to know it fully. And that was a difficult lesson to learn. But it echoes through the Eightfold Path for me. When we look at knowledge, right wisdom, it incorporates our clear knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, but also wisdom entails our seeing clearly for ourselves. Entails a deeper understanding than just what's appearing in the moment. I've done this before, and I think it bears doing again. This is just a piece of paper. Then I hold it up and we can see it as a piece of paper. What we don't see is that, it'll be crumpled up and just discarded or maybe recycled at some point. But also, it wasn't always this piece of paper. It got here in a truck. And before that, it was packaged up in this form. Before that, it was at a paper mill where it had at one point been, wood pulp that was mashed up and broken up and screened and turned into this paper. But before that, it was a tree. And that tree had been growing for quite a while. And we don't see the process of that tree growing. We don't see the seed it was at one point. We don't see it taking nutrition from the soil and the water and the sun and converting that into energy to grow so that, we could have this paper at some point. And so it is with life. What we get day to day is just this, what I call a snapshot. We get to see, we're seeing this piece of paper and not the reality of it, not the truth of the thing. We talked about seeing a flower and just seeing it as a flower and not all its component parts that are the reality of the situation. And when the Buddha talked about the Eightfold Path and understanding, which he almost always talked about, he always, frequently tied wisdom with compassion, right understanding with right thought. How we think about our fellow human beings, how we think about ourselves. Right now, we're seeing the snapshot of a lot of things that have arisen. We're seeing this plague. We're seeing the surge in opposition to oppression. This is the first day of summer. We're seeing that. And seeing, like this, I specifically wanted to talk about opposing oppression in this moment and how we're seeing that. Yesterday was Juneteenth. For those who aren't aware of it, Juneteenth is, I guess you would say, a celebration of what we think of as the Emancipation Proclamation, but it wasn't. Juneteenth happened 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery was ended supposedly by the Emancipation Proclamation, but in reality, it continued for years afterwards. Some states were not recognizing it, and Juneteenth was officially the legal end of slavery in this country. As we know, that was not the end of oppression. Black communities were burned, people have been lynched. We come into today, we see people escaping violence, on our southern borders, being turned away. We see people being denied, privileges that white skin allows us. We're all in different places with this, and I don't expect that everyone is in the same place with this. I'm just asking that, we hear this and sit with it and look at it for ourselves. We are all responsible for our own salvation from suffering. We are all responsible for our own enlightenment. We all need to dig in a little deeper and see for ourselves what our truth, what our reality is. As we sit with our reality of now, with how we're feeling about now, predetermination comes into where we are also and where we will be. How we think now about these issues will determine how we act in the future. Our thoughts, determine our actions. So I think we need to look for a deeper understanding of what's going on. Looking past the piece of paper or the snapshot. Getting to know. When we're in our reading, a thoughtful discussion of who we are, where we are, I think can lead us. Yeah, as I said, we're not all in the same place, and that's just fine. We are where we are. But I think it's important we see, or we look at, the modern, what's happening now, how people are being oppressed, not just in this country, but throughout the world. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday who was telling me that she is in the middle of nowhere in Colombia, in a small town, and 250 people showed up from another country who were looking for just to survive. And they were turned around and sent back to the border with 3 snacks, having walked for days to get there. Let's look at our brotherhood and sisterhood. Compassion. And compassion with knowledge and wisdom.